la famille.
Bonjour, everybody. My name is Stella Garber. Before I start, how many Trello users do we have here? Wonderful. Okay. I love Trello users, but many of you will hopefully become Trello users as well. That's my job. I'm Vice President of Marketing for Trello. But actually, before I joined Trello, I was an entrepreneur, just like all of you. How many of you are entrepreneurs? Most of you. Wonderful. Okay. I joined Trello last August to run the marketing team. And before that, I was the co-founder and CEO of Matchist, which was a marketplace for developers and entrepreneurs, which I sold. And then I was on the founding team of Fee Fighters, which was a payment startup that did Techstars in Chicago way back in 2010, and then raised money, grew the team, and got acquired by Groupon in 2012. Then I did a little bit of time at a venture capital firm, or actually two venture capital firms, one in Chicago called OCA Ventures, and then also I was a fellow for Foundation Capital, which is a VC firm based in Silicon Valley. And then I also got my MBA, which at the University of Chicago. So I have a lot of experience being an entrepreneur. I don't know if that translates to wisdom, probably not yet, but I definitely have some opinions that I'm really excited and happy to share with you, and especially some of the key metrics or how to know that you're going in the right direction. So, our goals for today are to cover the basic life cycle of a startup, since I've kind of been through it a couple times. Actually, part of the reason why I joined Trello was because my startups that I've been part of before had raised Series A rounds and then got acquired. So I was really interested in sort of what was beyond the Series A, the hyper growth phase of a company, which is actually where Trello is at today. So I want to share my personal experience, and then also I want to leave plenty of time for questions and discussion. So if you have questions, if I'm speaking too fast or anything, feel free to ask. If you want to ask in French, that's totally fine. Pauline has a microphone in the back, and she can translate. So please, I'm a very open and friendly person, so don't be afraid to ask. Okay, well, any questions to start? No? Okay, I've noticed that French people don't like to ask questions in the beginning. Okay, so ideation. That's okay. In the US, you get everyone has a question. Ideation. So this is probably the most important part of the business, because if you make the wrong decision about what to do, entrepreneurs are naturally curious, right? So when you want to start a business, you have 20 ideas about what you want to do. And you have to find the one that is not only the best idea for the market, but also the best idea for you as an entrepreneur. Because entrepreneurship is really hard and it sucks. It's great, but it also sucks. And so at the end of the day, you want to feel really good about the problem that you're trying to solve. And a lot of times, it may not be the most glamorous thing. For example, in my first startup, we had a comparison shopping marketplace for credit card processing. Okay, so credit card processing is every time you swipe your credit card at a business, where you're swiping it or where you put in the card, the business has to pay a third party in order to get money from your credit card. And in the US, and I think actually in Europe too, it's very expensive for businesses, and a lot of times they get ripped off. And so for me, for that business, it wasn't about the payments part. I don't really care about payments that much, but what I really care about is helping small business owners and making sure that they don't get ripped off by greedy banks. So the way that after Fee Fighters was acquired, and I was like, okay, what do I do? I'm an entrepreneur, I need another idea. I talked to a lot of other entrepreneurs who had done multiple businesses, and they told me that it's very important to make a framework. And this is actually something that in business school you do ad nauseum, is you just make these frameworks. A framework is just a list of questions that you can run ideas through. And then that framework is going to be different depending on what you're trying to do. For me was, am I going to be passionate about solving this problem in 5 years? So I had a lot of great ideas, and I always have a lot of ideas. I don't know if they're great. But if I can ask myself, in 5 years from now, am I really going to care about this? That's a really great first filter. And then the second thing is, do I have the right set of skills and experiences to solve this problem? Because that's the thing I mentioned earlier, where you might have a great problem that you're trying to solve, but if you don't have experience in that industry, or you don't have some sort of a cachet, it would be hard for you to make sales or partnerships or get early customers. So, and is this going to be the type of business that you want to run? So what I mean by that is, specifically for me, it had to do with funding. So after my first startup got acquired, I wanted to take a break from a business that would require a lot of venture capital money. So I wanted something that I could bootstrap on my own. So anytime I had an idea that would require a lot of money to build, or something that I couldn't do on my own, I would reject it based on that. So I think that's the last. Oh, and then will I have access to the right resources? And this kind of goes along with the, do I have the right sets of skills and experiences? So if your business idea, if you don't know the right people in the industry, or you don't have a reputation, it's going to be hard to develop it, right? So I'll give you an example of one business idea I was really excited about that I ended up rejecting based on this framework. So this was 2012, and I had just gotten engaged. No, 2000, yeah, maybe, I don't remember, 2013. Anyway, and the process of buying an engagement ring was really hard, okay? It was broken. My husband ended up buying a diamond online on a website called Blue Nile. And this website, I don't know if it's big in Europe, it's like the #1 diamond retailer in the US for online. And it looks like it was built in 1995, okay? It's the ugliest thing. It has no social media capabilities. It's very plain. And so the thing that I was really excited about was, maybe there was a potential to disrupt this industry. What if we make buying an engagement ring a social experiment? You know, when you're buying an engagement ring in the US, a lot of times you ask your mom, the fiance or whoever, whatever, you ask your mom and you ask your friends, and they're always looking on Pinterest. So why not build that into the shopping experience? So here I am with my idea, and I start networking and talking to people, and it turns out that, there's not a lot of competition in this space. So am I going to be passionate about solving this problem in 5 years? Maybe. Probably the time I got engaged was, the most excited I would ever be about shopping for an engagement ring. Then, do I have the right set of skills and experiences to solve this problem? So I went to a few jewelers in Chicago, and I pitched them on this idea. And it turned out, I think that was the point at which I realized I don't have a background in jewelry. Like, I can't look at a diamond and know if it's good or bad. I don't know what the network of jewelers and how the manufacturing and the distribution and the retail, I literally have no experience in this field. Also, this business would require a lot of capital in order to scale it. Even I found out there was a diamond database that all of the jewelers had access to, and that thing had cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to license, to even just have access to it. And so at the end of that process, my framework, I could see that it wasn't the right business for me, or it wasn't the right idea for the thing at the time that I wanted to build. So after you find the idea that passes your framework, and I guess I want to just mention that your framework is going to be different. It's going to be different for you versus you. It's going to be based on your experiences, and you really have to be honest with yourself while you're doing it. Okay. Next. It's okay. I got it. Okay, product development. So the business idea that I ended up with was this marketplace for developers and entrepreneurs. It passed all of the things that I was passionate about in my framework. You know, I'd already been involved in the entrepreneurship community. I was doing events in Chicago that people would reach out to me all the time and say, oh, you do all of these events for entrepreneurs. Do you know any developers? And it turns out my business partner was a developer and a freelance developer, and a lot of people were reaching out to him to see whether they had business. You know, like other developers were looking for startups to work with, but for some reason there was a disconnect in that community. So we started working on our product, and the first piece of advice from that experience is to really scale down your idea of an MVP. So obviously everybody knows what an MVP is, right? Yes, okay. That's a very basic idea. The thing is that people a lot of times, they think their MVP is something, but what you need to do is you need to take your idea of an MVP and then like cut half of the features or things that you want to do away from it. This was a mistake that I definitely made with our matching. Oh yeah. Oh, minimum viable product. So it's the thing that you can, thank you, the thing that you can make that proves your idea is going to work in the smallest possible way. What you want to be doing is you want to be proving that your idea is going to be successful. And so what entrepreneurs a lot of times do is they take, you know, a lot of time and money, they build a thing, whether it's an app or a website or opening a retail front, before they've proved that the actual demand is there. And so you want to stay away from that. What we did, we wrote down all of the features that we wanted to build, and my business partner, who's a software developer, started building them. And then when we launched it, and it was so funny because we knew this, we're like, okay, we're not gonna make this mistake, okay? We're not gonna build too much. It's gonna be super basic. It turned out that our MVP had all these features that nobody wanted to use, okay? We had, in our matching marketplace, we had the ability for people to talk to each other, and we had the ability for developers to track payments in their taxes, and track payments for the purpose of taxes. But it turned out, after testing, that the only thing that developers cared about were getting good clients and getting paid on time. So everything that we built, it was superfluous, it was unnecessary, it was a waste of time and money, and you don't have that, right, as an entrepreneur. The other thing to be really careful about is to launch something that has the metrics that you can track. And you want to be able to set your criteria for success ahead of time. So when we launched Matchist, we were hoping to get in our initial week, like maybe 50 developers. I can't remember the exact number, but let's say 50 developers signed up. And we said, okay, if we can get 50 developers, it will be a success. And we had 300 developers sign up. So we're like, okay, that's a clue. We're on to something here. You always want to be selling, even in your product development process. The best thing that you can do is you're developing your product, you're talking to customers. The first day that you launch your business, you want to be emailing a list of people already. So you want to be having people signing up on a landing page, or people in your community who are supportive of you, your mom's friends, whatever it is. You want to be able to, the day that you launch, already have an audience for the thing that you're doing. And in marketing, you're always wanting to be marketing no matter what you're doing. So the other thing is that you're going to constantly be iterating. So that means no matter what you build, by the time you actually launch it, you are already going to want to change whatever you launch. And you have to be okay with that. And I think that's an important part of your MVP, the minimum viable product. You can change much quicker the simpler that the product is. And then this is really important. Beware of seeking validation for your ideas. So a lot of times, as you're talking to customers, you'll say, excuse me, would you use a site where you could shop for an engagement ring with your friends? And obviously people are going to say yes because they want to be nice to you. Instead, what you want to do is say, what's your ideal engagement ring shopping experience? And then see what they respond. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Building a team. This is really important. Your co-founder, a lot of times people will just, they're so desperate to, they want to be entrepreneurs, they have this idea, they're so passionate about it, and they are willing to work with people potentially who are not the right fit, especially if it's someone who's looking for a technical co-founder. Technical co-founders are really hard to find in the US. I'm sure it's a similar thing here in France. How to find the right co-founder. So I highly, highly recommend that you work with someone that you've already worked with in the past. It can be someone from your church, it can be a childhood classmate, basically someone who you know has integrity, and you have basically if they do something bad to you, there's repercussions for it. Like, they're not gonna want to act in a way that's not the best. You want to analyze in terms of the long term and the short term. So I'll give you an example of that. My co-founder for Matches, actually, we had already worked together on 2 other things before we launched. We had the same ideas around what we wanted to do. We used the same framework for analyzing business ideas, and we both sort of, sometimes people really like to get together and work and have coffee, and I'm not like that. I like to just execute, and we're both the same way. So no small talk. We're not friends. We're there to do the business. And I think that that could potentially, if the person had a different personality, it might be something where, they're not asking me how my kids are, they don't care, and that's not the case. So you want to also look at the long term and the short term, because keep in mind, the average business, it takes 7 years to exit on average. That hasn't been the case for me, but that's fine. So you have to think about the fact that, does this person, what kind of goals do they have? Do their goals align with yours? Are they willing to, do they think about life in the same way that you do? It's a very existential question, but it's important to think about. Then, another really, really important thing is the risk tolerance. So risk tolerance means how long can they do this new venture before they start to think, oh my gosh, I need to get a full-time job, or this is too risky for me. And people have very different levels of risk tolerance. And you definitely don't want to be in a position where you're ready, you're in 100%, you've quit your job, and then this is so common. I can't tell you how often I've seen it. The other person will be like, I need 4 more months. I'm about to have a child. I can't really do this. And you've quit your job, So you have to make sure that you talk about all of these things, your future goals, your working style, before you start the business. And then you definitely want to align your compensation with incentives. So when I was in business school, this was a really big thing. People would be doing startups, and because they didn't have money, they would just give equity away. And I'm like, why would you give equity away? Equity is the most valuable thing in your business. If you want to give equity away, the way that you do it is you have it on a vesting cycle. So what that means is you don't get the equity right away. You sign, you're a co-founder, and you have all your equity. It's you get your first batch of equity. Usually it's after a year of working, and then you get 25% of equity for every year after that. And it's very, very common in the US for formal businesses to have vesting cycles for founder equity. And especially if you're seeking investors, it's going to look very bad if you give the investors your cap table, basically the sheet of paper that shows who has what equity in your business. And there's all these people on it who are worked for 3 months on your startup. So you want to make sure that the compensation is aligned. And sometimes that's hard because you don't have cash in the beginning of your startup, but cash can sometimes be way cheaper than equity. And then technical co-founder. So for those of you who are doing technical businesses, I highly recommend actually not spending a lot of time looking for a technical co-founder if you don't know somebody already, because it's very hard to find those people. It's also hard to find people who have those skills, but also who have like the personality and the goals, and like, so you not only have to find someone who has that skill set that you're looking for, but it's also, you have to do the questions about the co-founder as well. And now there's a lot of agencies and a lot of alternatives, and it's much cheaper to build an app or to build a website to test your MVP before you find a technical co-founder. The last thing that you want to do is spend like a year looking for a technical co-founder, and that's a year that you haven't proven your idea works, you know? So just be careful of that. Okay, so questions founders ask. When should I raise money? This is, yes. Yeah. Sure.
We're actually looking at recruiting someone that will handle the technical aspect of our business.
Yeah.
And can you give advices on how to test someone? Like, you know, you don't want to say, okay, we're going to give you equity right away, or if you don't know the person, you don't know if it aligns, etc.
Yep.
But do you pay them? Do you, you know, it's not like a freelance person. It's a person that's excited about our vision and they want to work, but maybe you don't want, you know, they don't want to work for free. Have you had this situation before?
Yes, very common. The way that you go around that is you work on a smaller project together. Or let's say you do a 3-month engagement with them where you pay them in cash for whatever they're building, or maybe it's like deferred equity. You can work it out that says, you know, if this works out after 3 months, then that 3 months of work can become equity, or if it doesn't work out, then we'll just do cash. And I think that it's a really good opportunity for not only you to test their technical skills, but also for you to test the compatibility with the team, and also like how passionate they are about the idea. No one is ever going to be as passionate as the founder. Like, that's just how it is. Yeah. So, is this working? No. Okay, it's fine. So, building a team. Questions founders ask, when should I raise money? The answer is, you'll know. If you're answering that question, or if you're asking that question right now, you probably don't need to raise money. You probably really should be focusing on your KPIs, your key performance indicators, the things that you set, and the metrics that you set in your startup to show that you succeed. And the thing that you can do, actually, I think I talk about this later on, is that you find people who have invested in companies like yours, and you ask them, what metrics, what traction do you need to see in order for you to consider putting money in a business like mine? And they'll tell you, we need to see, you know, $20,000 MRR, monthly recurring revenue, or you need to have at least, you know, 1,000 new customers per month or something. They will have in mind the metrics that they need to know before they consider putting money into your business. So honestly, I wouldn't think about this too much until you feel the need. Like, you'll be like, I can't grow my business unless I have that capital. So should I raise money? This is a really good one. I think I've been in the community for a long time, and the thing is, a lot of people think that they need to raise money, but then there's the statistic that like 96 or 97% of businesses don't actually raise money. Everyone thinks that they're in that like 3% of companies that actually raise money. So I think you have to be very honest with yourself, and you have to be very honest looking at your financial plan and the metrics that you've set out, and try to not get blinded by the glamour of raising money, because raising money is very hard, it's very distracting, and the chances of success are very low. Should I do an accelerator? This is a really good question. I've done an accelerator, and I mentor for Techstars in Chicago, or I did Techstars, and now I mentor for Techstars. And a lot of times, entrepreneurs will ask this question, and the answer is that it depends on two things, really, maybe three. One is what the accelerator is. There are a lot of different accelerators and incubators, and they offer a lot of different things. And sometimes there are people that pretend to be an accelerator, and they try to attract entrepreneurs, but then they overpromise and underdeliver. So what you want to do is you want to talk to successful alumni of whatever accelerator you're potentially considering and have honest conversations about what they got out of it. The second thing is what stage of business you're in. You know, the most important thing for early stage entrepreneurs is focus. Raising money can be a distraction. Doing an accelerator can be a distraction. However, it can also be a huge boost to your business. A company in Chicago that I've mentored was considering doing an accelerator, and it was really funny because they were like, oh, we're so successful, we don't need to do this accelerator, like, you know, it's going to be a distraction. And I was like, no. Like, you guys, you need key partnerships in your business right now. You're doing really well in Chicago, but your vision is to scale to lots of other cities. I really think that it would be, you know, a game changer for your business. And they did it, and they raised like a ton of money afterwards because they met, that's what they were trying to do, and they met a lot of really important people who helped them rethink their business model. So, okay, how do I know when there is product market fit? You'll know. It's a magical moment. Oh, weird. Thank you, Alexia. So, you'll definitely know. There's something that happens, like you make a change in your product, or you sign a customer, and all of a sudden things work. All of a sudden things start growing, and you're like, this must be wrong. I've been failing for like 6 months. And then whatever it is, you figure it out, you'll know. And your investors will know, or the people that you're talking to, your mentors, they'll tell you. Mm-hmm. That's a great question. The question was, how long do I stick around trying to get the product market fit? And honestly, it depends on you. It depends on how much money you have. It depends on your, you know, how committed you are, kind of, but also like what your alternatives are, how many different things that you've tried. Have you tried absolutely everything? So I think it's a lot of times you have to have an honest conversation with yourself about, and it's hard. Entrepreneurship is hard. That's like the theme of this whole talk, I think. But I'm not going to deter you from being an entrepreneur because it's also the best thing in the world. So yeah, it's a tough question. And there's not a lot of like concrete answers, if that makes sense. Okay, so funding the business. Okay, you have your seed funding, and I think a lot of times people get confused about what like all the different stages are, and this may not apply to you. This is, I think, you know, I have a background in technology. So you have your seed funding, and the whole point of your seed funding is to build something. So you've done your MVP, you have some really cool statistics about people who have signed on, and you start asking your friends and family and maybe some early angel investors for money. And then, you know, you fail a little bit, but then something happens and you find that product market fit. And your Series A is all about scaling, okay? It's all about growing that product that you've built, depending on what metrics you've set out for yourself. So if revenue is the most important thing, you're hitting your revenue targets every month. It may not be revenue, it may be users. Like for Trello, when we raised our Series A, it was about the fact that we had 4 million users, and we were adding, like, at that point, 50,000 users every week. Now we're like 125,000 users every week, which is awesome. And then your Series B is about you've found the formula for making money or for growth, and you're just going to add gasoline to the fire. That's what the Series B is about. Okay, so angels versus VCs. What's the difference, and how do they think differently? So angels, they are, also I should say that obviously my experience is based on the US, so caveat, I don't know anything about French VCs or French angels. So angels are informal relationships. They are passionate. They're going to put money into your business because they like you as an entrepreneur, and they like your idea, and maybe they see a little bit of themselves in you, like from 20 years ago, and they want you to succeed. They are actually, they're living vicariously through you. You know what that means? Like, through your fun entrepreneurial experience, they're also having fun. They're reliving their glory days. And one thing to consider is that they don't tend to do follow-on rounds unless they're like extremely wealthy. But usually angel investors tend to be, or in angel groups, they tend to participate in the seed and maybe the Series A, but usually not after that. VCs, on the other hand, are very sophisticated, okay? These guys meet entrepreneurs for a living. They think about value add, okay? They think about the fact of, like, if they invest in you and they're on your board, how can they add value to your business? Like, have they been in your shoes before? They're have been a media entrepreneur and they like what you're doing and they can add that experience. These guys see a ton of deal flow. When I worked in VC, my job as like the lowest person on the totem pole was to look at the pitch decks, okay, of the entrepreneurs, of all of you. Okay, this is what happens at a VC firm. Someone who is like in business school or maybe a year out of business school is looking at all of the deals that come in through email, okay? I would be looking at maybe 50 to 70 pitch decks every day. You see a lot of pitch decks, you see a lot of patterns, and VCs are all about pattern recognition. That's why VCs will issue market reports about what they see going on because they see all of that deal flow. I should say it's different if you're talking directly to a partner, because I think partners are very sophisticated, and but if you can talk to a partner, it's just going to happen faster. You don't have to go through all of the processes and the hierarchy. And I think that's a big difference between VCs and angels. Angels will act, they don't have to ask. They don't have a Monday morning partner meeting where they present the startup that they're interested in investing in. They just write a check and they give it to you, okay? In the best case scenario. VCs have to convince the rest of the firm sometimes to get behind them. Sometimes it'll be an analyst who's really passionate about your idea, who's like fighting to get the partner to pay attention to these entrepreneurs. So keep those things in mind. How do you find these people, okay? You have the family, obviously. The good news is that you can find them. Almost all of the network and VCs and angels, they're out there. They're going to events. They have public emails listed. They want deal flow, okay? They want these deals coming in. They want to see your ideas. So you can, and they are willing to take meetings with you and have coffee with you. If you can get it through a warm introduction versus a cold email. Like a cold email is if you don't know anybody and you just find the email address on the website, like don't do that, okay? Because you will not, a lot of entrepreneurs will make a list of all the venture capital firms and then just email their pitch decks. Don't do it. It's going straight into their spam, okay? What you want to do is you want to find a way to make a relationship. investors and all of that it's about relationships, and it's about a long-term relationship. So there's no secret formula to it. Sometimes an investor might just like you because you look like their son, or like, you know, they like the font that you used in your pitch deck, or it's like something really silly like that. You don't know. I mean, most of the time it's because they see the passion in you, they see something in you, they see a spark, you know. They make a decision about whether they like you or not in the first 20 seconds of meeting you. I've seen this, okay? But that can work to your advantage because you know yourself best and you can put your best foot forward. So before you start fundraising, you want to actually already have the network. So there's a famous VC, I can't remember, I think it's Brad Feld, who says that investors, they invest in a line, not a dot. So the dot is the first time that you meet them. And a lot of times entrepreneurs expect an investor to write a check in the first meeting, and that almost never happens. What happens is you have a meeting and you say, well, you know, what can I show you the next time that we meet? And they say, well, I need to see these 3 numbers. And you say, okay, is it okay if I email you when I've reached these numbers? And they'll say, sure. Or they'll, you know, maybe they won't, but you'll still email them. And the next time you meet and you've hit those things, and you say, are you ready to invest yet? And probably they will say no. And then they'll say, but if in 2 months you can secure a partnership with a consulting I don't know, something, then email me. So basically, you want to, by the time you're ready to fundraise, you don't want to be starting that process of meeting investors. Does that make sense? Okay. Lines, not dots. Okay. If they say no, find out why. Okay. If they say no, there's usually a reason. They're probably not going to invest, but sometimes it'll give you a clue for what you need for the next investor, if that makes sense. Okay, getting traction. So the initial questions you want to answer are, what are my unit economics? Does everyone here, who knows what unit economics are? Okay, good. Most people don't know. So unit economics are, how much does it cost you to produce one thing, one product, how much it costs to acquire one customer. You want to know all of those things, or you want to be figuring those are the key metrics that you're figuring out in the stage of getting traction. Because those are the things, if you want to be raising money, those are the things that investors will expect you to know when you meet with them. So how can I iterate and move more quickly? When you're doing a startup, it's a race against time, because there are 100 other people out there who are trying to do the exact same thing that you're doing. So if you can strip away the non-essential things and move more quickly, you're more likely to be successful. What is my business model? This is something that you want to be thinking about. Sometimes you won't know, and sometimes it'll change. But in this stage of getting traction, I think these are like the most important things you want to think about. And then here are the basic unit economics, your customer acquisition cost. It actually costs money to get customers, okay? This is like a revolutionary idea. And one of my mentors who runs Techstars in Chicago, this is the question that he asks every single, in their Techstars interview, okay? If you don't have a good answer for what is your customer acquisition cost, or how am I going to figure out my customer acquisition cost, you're not going to go very far. Your customer lifetime value, or just your lifetime value, that's how much money is the customer going to give you for the duration of their time as a customer. So you want to know that, and you always want to make sure that the lifetime value is greater than the customer acquisition cost. And sometime in the long term, in the short term, in the beginning, as you're doing a lot of growth, the acquisition cost might be higher than the lifetime value, but over time, it should level off. Yes, So we're always thinking about it. Oh, yeah. He asks, did we do this, the unit economics and the figuring out the customer acquisition in the very early stage? I think this is more like you have some guesses when you're doing in the early stages, but not until you've launched a product and you're selling and you're doing tests do you start to get actual data and you can validate what you've built in your model, if that makes sense. You're not going to know exactly, but you should know, like, by the time you're thinking about either raising a Series A or like scaling or spending money on marketing. You better not be spending a lot of money on marketing if you don't know those things. Like at Trello, for example, we don't do any paid acquisition. And the reason why we don't do any paid acquisition of customers is because 99% of our customers are free. And that means that their lifetime value from a monetary perspective is like 0. So why would we be paying money to acquire users? It doesn't make sense. Free users. Acquisition. Okay, so I've done this twice now. And it's really weird. Sometimes it just happens when you're not looking for it. It's the same way with raising money. A lot of times the people who can raise money don't want to because they're already successful. And those are the things that people are looking for. In my first company, Fee Fighters, we were raising a Series B when we started talking to Groupon, and we kind of saw pretty quickly that they weren't interested in investing. They were interested in an acquisition. And it was crazy because, like, we didn't really want that. But we had to reconsider because it was, it was good. And like most things, this comes from networking. So it can come from meeting people at a cocktail event for an industry thing. Like, let's say, a lot of times what happens is like big companies will throw these networking events that are about innovation, and they invite some entrepreneurs or startup people, and because they like ideas and they want that mingling. And sometimes you'll meet those big companies that would much rather acquire a startup than build something on their own. Okay? Oops. Also, a thing you should consider is if you already have investors, they should be the ones who are helping you find an acquisition partner. And sometimes these things will happen as you're doing partnership deals. Like you're doing a partnership with a big company or you're doing a partnership with somebody and they just rather acquire you than do it. And I don't know I really hope I'm not making it sound easy because it's not. You also can lean on the entrepreneurship community. One of the best things about being an entrepreneur is that when you meet another entrepreneur, you have that connection, right? Yes? And so sometimes if you can be honest and you have a good network that you can appeal to, you can say, like, we're thinking about an acquisition. Do you have any ideas of people because entrepreneurs, the CEOs, are the ones who are out there and who have those valuable networks. You also want to understand the acquirer's perspective. In the US, it's very common for companies to do, we call it an acqui-hire. So instead of hiring engineers, it's just easier for them to swallow a startup or to acquire a startup that's maybe not doing that great, but has really great engineering talent. So I think as you're thinking about it, you definitely want to understand what they're looking for. So I think that's it. Yeah. That's me on Twitter. Also, Trello is great. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the presentation. I'm also happy to answer any questions that you have about Trello or marketing or launching in France or whatever.
Thank you. Marie-Michel Vassilio, I have questions. Apparently, at the point where you have about business model seems to be completely at the end. Can you pitch without having a business model?
I think you have a business model in mind, but what happens is when you have your business plan at the beginning, it's all just made up. It's all fake. It's based on assumptions that you've made that maybe are based on hopefully experiments that you've done, but a lot of times you're just making it up. And that's why I sort of put that you're thinking about your business model maybe you're thinking about the final version of your business model, because what happens is sometimes you think you can monetize a certain, like a certain segment, and then you find out that really you can monetize the other side better. Like, for example, at our initial business model for Matchist, we sort of based it on Odesk. Have you heard of Odesk? It's like it's not great. So what they do is they charge both sides of the marketplace money. And so in our initial marketplace, like, okay, Odesk does this, we're also going to monetize both sides of the market. And it turned out that, like, it didn't work. It only worked to monetize one side, the supply side. They're the ones, so in our case it was with entrepreneurs and developers. Entrepreneurs weren't willing to pay, but developers were willing to pay because they didn't want to spend time trying to find business. So instead of trying to do both, we just monetized the developers. So our business model, we had one, it was wrong. Almost always it's wrong at the beginning, but that's okay. It's more of an intellectual exercise getting you to think about the things that are important in your business. Yeah, and I would say, like, also, like, you spend a lot of time writing up a business plan, and, like, that's kind of a waste. Like, you should be out and doing stuff and executing. Like, have your business model, it's like one page or like a couple of pages, but I think in the US especially, there's definitely a move away from business plans. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
You mentioned Trello in France.
Yes.
I wanted to know. I would be happy to know a bit more about your rollout plan. Sorry.
Yeah. So we launched in French, the French version of the app on September 15th, and actually our CEO Michael came here and talked about it, which was really cool. And we had 250,000 users in France before we launched, and our whole sort of thinking about it is that the entrepreneurs, the tech people, the developers, they are the ones who find Trello first, and they are okay using apps in English. But if we want your mom and your other non-technical friends to use a product, then it has to be localized. So with France, actually Alexia, who's in charge of international development, I guess, she did a lot of research because we try to have we've launched in 3 different countries, or 4 countries counting France, so we try to have a localized launch strategy for each place. And in France, there were a couple of differences. So one is that Trello is used mostly for business use cases. In the US, it tends to be like maybe 50-50 business versus personal, or maybe like 60 business and 40 personal. In France, it's like 80 business, 20 personal. And then it's also very important to have like in-person connections. Like in Brazil, we did a lot of digital webinars and digital press conferences, but that doesn't seem to be a thing in France. It seems to be this kind of stuff that's important. So that's why I'm here. More questions? Uh-huh. It's okay.
Thank you. I have a lot of questions. One of them being, when you want to start your startup, you've got an idea. At what point can you really talk about it without...
Oh, that's a great question. You should talk about it from the beginning, because your idea it's not worth much, okay? You should assume that you should assume that there are a lot of other people who are doing the exact same thing that you are. And it's really not about your idea, it's about the execution. So the times that I wouldn't talk about an idea are if you're talking to someone who's invested in a company that's a competitor, or someone who is a competitor, But even then, I don't know that I would talk about the idea. I wouldn't talk about my metrics. Like, ideas aren't worth anything. Sorry. Wait, I'm sorry. The reason I say that is because I have a marketplace for developers and entrepreneurs, right? And the number one thing that happened is these entrepreneurs would write in and they'd be like, I want to hire a developer, but I can't tell them my idea. And I'm like, what? how are they supposed to do your idea and they're like, no, my idea is worth, $10 million. I'm like, I'm sorry, it's not. Not unless you get a developer to build it. That's why I feel very passionate about that. So yeah, go ahead.
Hi. And what are your key metrics at Trello right now?
Great question. What are our key metrics at Trello? So we have 3 big goals for Trello. Growth. So we want to be at 20 million users by the end of next year. We're at around 11 million now. Revenue. So our internal goal is to triple our revenue by the end of next year. And then our third goal is retention. So the people who sign up, we want to make sure that they stick around. So any any initiative that we do, whether it's marketing or product or sales, goes back to those 3 things, and especially the 2 metrics. More questions? No?
Que la famille.